and welcome to episode 3 of my series, What Shall I Do With This Thing? Holiday Edition. This is the series where I take a selection of purposeless things and turn them into something new and interesting that I actually want to display in my home. This episode should perhaps more accurately be called What Shall I Do With These Things? Plural, because in this video I'm actually going to be making 12 mini things out of a selection of other little things that I've had squirreled away in my flat. And since this is December, we are going to be making Christmas decorations. Now, despite being a generally grinchy person who doesn't really care for Christmas, I am someone who really likes making things. And since I moved into this flat in 2020, I have been on a mission to make just an absolute shitload of decorations for it, which has been a fun little ongoing project throughout the last 4 years. When it comes to my tree, I like to go for a more is more approach. If it's shiny or tacky and or slightly unnerving, then it belongs on there. I don't really decorate any of the other areas of my flat except for stringing up some fabric tinsel around a few places. So I really do just concentrate all of my creative energy onto my tree. I don't subscribe to the idea that decorations need to be tasteful or all matching, and I definitely don't agree with the normalization of changing up all of your Christmas decorations every year. That's just so wasteful. I would say that I'm a collector at heart, and I firmly believe that a set of holiday decorations is most special when it's gathered and collected over time from different places, different periods of your life, and then maybe even passed on to future generations. I do have some decorations in my collection which were on my family tree growing up, so it's nice to have them on my tree as an adult. I also love to make things, of course, and most of the decorations that I have either upcycled from something or made myself. I think that tree baubles give the perfect opportunity for unthinking, playful making, being as they are small and mostly inconsequential. If you watched my art room makeover video, you will know that I keep a small hoard of bits of tat up here in some boxes. The stuff in here is a mix of bits that I found over the years in charity shops and at boot fairs, and also some stuff that I've had in my possession since childhood or teenagehood. And I keep this kind of stuff for sentimental reasons partly, but also to use for silly little projects like this one. I had a good rummage through these the other day and picked out a little selection of things that I thought would be fun to play around with this year. Usually when I make decorations, I don't think too much into it before I start making. I just get a load of tat out and play around and see what comes out. And quite often that just means tying some string to some fake fruit and calling it a day. But for this project, I did decide to put a little bit more planning in than I usually do. So I've done some little drawings on Illustrator of what it is that I'm wanting to make. And here they are. So the loose theme here is the 12 days of Christmas, and we're going to be making 12 different decorations from 12 plus bits of tat that I've had in these boxes. Here's that little selection right here. Some of these are a more abstract reading of the theme than others, admittedly. Some of them are going to be super quick and easy to do, while other ones are going to take a little bit more time and effort. But altogether, I'm hoping that from this project, I'm going to end up with a cute little set of non-matching decorations that I can pull out every year and add to my tree. And I'll introduce you properly to each one as we get to making. On the 12th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 12 drummers drumming, which is exactly what I wanted. This is definitely one of the easiest ones that I've got to do because I already had a really good option for this in my box of stuff, which is this little clown who is indeed drumming. This is from a vintage hanging mobile that I got from a charity shop. I do still have lots of the other bits of it, but when I bought it, it was all tangled up and broken, so I've got them all separately now. I could easily just tie a knot in this string and hang it straight on the tree, and I wouldn't have to do anything. But I do love to embellish, so I'm going to add a few little things to this before I'm going to call it done. First one being this little piece of wood, which is one of those things that you get in a little packet on the back of a canvas, and I've just got a few of them in my craft box. So I thought, why don't I use this as a little sign so it can say 12 drummers drumming on it. I do want each of them to have their little title written somewhere on them, whether it be super visible or somewhere more hidden. That's so I can remember in the future when I made them and what I made them for. Also, I should say there's going to be a lot of outfits jumping in and out in this video because I want it edited so that we're doing each number one at a time, but I'm not going to necessarily be filming them all in that order. I've got some things that need paper macheing or other things that are going to take longer to dry that I want to get started on sooner. So I'm just going to be filming things and then editing them back. So in some clips I'll be wearing this, or 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 this. So I want this to be like a little hand painted kind of fun fair looking sign. I want to paint an accent colour on the edges, I think, and I want to switch this sad string out for a nice colourful ribbon. And because I want the paint job to be semi-decent, I am going to actually give this and the sides a little prime with some wood primer before I go in with my acrylic paint. And I'm going to be using this comically large tin of wood primer for such a tiny little job. That's the first step to get going with. So let's do it. Susan's out and I've just sacrificed this paintbrush to use as a stirrer for my primer. Just a quick sand with a little tiny bit of sandpaper. It's fun working in miniature because everything takes no time at all. Usually I hate sanding, but that was actually a delightful little task. Now I'm just going to do the same with the edges of this, give it a light sand and a prime, and then I'll show you how it looks. I decided that while this primer dries, I can touch up these little edges of scuffing on his hat and shoes just with a black Sharpie. It's not going to be a perfect match, but it will tidy him up nonetheless. Maybe I should pick the colour of the ribbon I'm going to use on it. Bowl O ribbon. I'm thinking for him a baby pink ribbon. This is a nice, I think, glass bead from a long beaded necklace that my gran gave me, and the necklace was actually broken, so I had the beads all in a jar, and then I've been using them for my Christmas decorations specifically so that they're kind of scattered throughout my whole tree and I get to enjoy them and enjoy the memory of my gran. This little pink one on the top of here, kind of like a little bauble on his hat, and then I can use the pink ribbon and also paint the sides pink. So I messed up the first attempt on one side, so this is why we painted both sides, to give me a second chance at doing something correctly. So let's try again. I messed up again. So I've painted over that. This was supposed to be the really quick one and I've already made this silly mistake. You can still see the Sharpie through the paint, so I'm going to have to do the background and then go over the words again. Decided that I'm going to paint this in green to try and match the colour of his trousers. Okay, so I messed up again and I had to paint it all green. Just so small, it's really hard to get the writing neat. So after all of that, the sanding, the priming, the painting in multiple coats, and then repainting and painting again, I have ended up writing it out with a fine liner on a white sticker and sticking it on the front of this. And this is the best it's looked. So we're going with it. While I may be kicking myself for going about this in a completely unjustifiably long-winded way, all I care to focus on is the result, and I'm happy enough with it. So all I need to do is stick this to the front of this here, which I'm going to be doing with super glue. The tense moment when I lift my fingers to make sure that A, this is fully stuck down, which I'm sure it will be, and B, that I haven't also been sticking my thumbs to this. Let's find out. No, I didn't get any on me. That's a personal best. Finally, all I have to do is add my bead for his little bobble hat and add my ribbon. Is that ribbon too long? Okay, that's a better length. There's no part of this process that I'm not turning into an unnecessary faff, which I need to not do with the other ones that I'm making, because otherwise this video is going to be long and boring. We trim the excess and we've got our first bloody decoration done. There he is, representative of 12 drummers drumming. So now we move on from probably the most straightforward decoration to possibly the most convoluted, which is of course 11 pipers piping, and it's convoluted only because I've made it so. I did have a really easy option for this day, but I don't want two of this set to be too matching. I think that that's a bit lazy, so I'm not going to be using this, and instead we're going in a completely different direction, which I think I'm going to explain in a voiceover that I can record later, because I don't think I have the mental capacity to try and justify it to you right in this moment. So let's see what I've got to say. To be honest, I felt really uninspired by the starting point of Piper's piping, so I mostly ignored that brief and just made my plan around the selection of things that I wanted to use for this one. We've got an empty plastic paperclip pot, a broken phone cable, an old bow, and a couple of these vintage plastic doll faces. I also want to use this as a place to store these small handwritten word cards, which I got a while ago from a charity shop. The idea here is that the plastic pot is a brain, the phone cable is the grey matter, and the word cards are the thoughts. To make it at least slightly pipery though, I'm also going to add a paper mache smoking pipe inside of the brain too, because I think about nicotine way more than I think about woodwind instruments. And I'm also going to turn the top of the jar into a cherry pie, because that kind of sounds like pipe. Let's go. It's really annoying to me quite how little time cables last you, and I always feel really bad about getting rid of them. So now if I have a cable and it breaks, I shove it up in my boxes up there and I try and use it for something. And in this case, obviously this is going to be the brain matter, which is going to go into this jar. I'm not going to take off either of these ends because I don't just want to chuck them in the bin. I'm just going to try and hide them in the middle so you can't see them. To be honest, you're not going to see any of this really. This is all just for the hell of it, and also as a way to use this up, because if it's going to exist in the flat, it might as well exist inside of this wedged between some doll faces. It's as good a place as any. Okay, so I've masking taped the ends of my cable together, and this is where the pipe is going to be. So I'm going to bulk this out with a bit of cardboard until I've got the right size and shape that I want. At this point it looks more like an inhaler, which is probably a nicer thing, but I don't use an inhaler, so it seems weird to have one in my Christmas decoration. I have just checked that it fits through here. You just have to angle it right. This is a very chaotic solution to what wasn't really a problem to begin with. This is where we're starting with the paper mache, so that's fine for that one. Prepped. Onto the pie, which is going to be made from the lid of this jar, and again this is going to be paper mache, which I'll build up with a bit of cardboard. First though, I need to make sure that I make this hole in the plastic bigger because I've got to get some of this through it, so I'm doing it an easy, lazy way. Well, that was surprisingly effective. So now I need to turn it into a little pie. Using thread scissors for cardboard is stupid. I did it anyway. I find that concertinaing the cardboard is a good option for adding mass without adding too much weight. And here's the little pie. I think at the moment, if anything, it looks like a pork pie, which isn't ideal. I kind of want it to look like a cherry pie. But I think I can achieve that effect through the paper mache and the paint. So now we've got our two little frames for this one. I want to get a coat of the paper mache on there today, just with glue roll and PVA glue. I need to be careful not to get any paper mache on the inside of this cap because this still needs to function as a little screw top, so I need to keep folding it back on itself. The good thing about making a pie is if the pastry is a bit rough, you just say it's a homemade pie, like in that Lurpak advert. Sticky. Okay, so this is the first coat done on the pie, and I think now I've got to leave it to dry until I do any more, because otherwise it's just sticking back onto me and making a mess. So now I'll move on to my pipe. And first coat done on the pipe. It's looking somewhere in between a pipe and an inhaler at this point. It's fine with me. I've added a bit of cross-hatched pastry on the top there, which doesn't look like much now, but I think having it a little bit 3D will make a difference once it's painted. So we leave it to dry, and I'm going to move on to doing one more coat on my pipe. A new day has dawned, and I have been mocking up the inside of my piping. But next on the list is painting my paper mache bits for this one. Let's start with the pie first because it's the more fun one. I'm going to be painting 11 Piper's piping around the outside perimeter of this pie. So maybe it is good that it is a little on the deep side, but I'm going to do a full coat of just the pie colour first and then paint on the words at the final stage. That's a pretty perfect pastry colour, if I do say so myself. I will do another coat, but it already looks so much better than in the white. Now I'm just going to do the little red filling for it. Not bad at all. Now I better let this dry and move on to my pipe, wherever it's gone. It's just more and more clear to me that this does not look much like a pipe at all. It's somewhere between an inhaler and a literal bit of poo at the moment, but this is not a detail that I'm going to allow myself to get too hung up on. One of the worst things I've made in a while. Our pie is dry, and so is our pipe. But the less said about that, the better. Before I can seal these, I just need to add the writing around the side of this pie. So I'm going to try and do this relatively quickly. It's pretty rough, but it doesn't matter. It's funny because from any one angle, what you read will mean very little. Ersp, Pippin, Hingy. While my pie dries, I also want to use some more of this red paint and just add a little trickle around the mouth of one side of this, so he looks like he's got some cherry residue on his chin. Does look more like blood than cherry pie. Do you remember Baby All Gone? She loved cherries from a jar, and I kind of want this to look like he loves cherries from a jar. It does just look like he's got a split lip, but we're gonna go with it, so I'll leave that to dry as well. It's time to seal, and I'm gonna start with this horrible pipe. I hate it so much. My pie, on the other hand, I am pleased with. The lettering's a bit messy, but the lettering on all of these is going to be a bit messy, and we're going to say that that's the aesthetic. I'm just prepping my little faces so that they're ready to be stuck onto the sides of this jar. What I'm doing to connect the two together is sew a little patch of vinyl underneath at the neck, and then it will be glued directly onto the thing at the top. It's like a little maraca of faces. Got different things to assemble. Obviously the pot, the pipe, the pie, the faces, thoughts that are going to go in the brain. And then also I've got this broken ribbon, which I'm going to use as a bow on the top of their head. Let's start by putting this awful pipe where it needs to go. This has been an extremely silly way to try and use this phone cable, but I suppose a Christmas decoration can be as stupid as you like. Once it's wedged in there, it's not quite as aggravating to me. Kind of just a vessel for me to be able to keep these safe, because I think they're so lovely. Someone spent some time on their penmanship and really given thought to the things that matter to them. Oh yeah, you can barely see the pipe at all now. If it had been good, it would have actually been annoying, so maybe I intentionally, subconsciously made it look like a turd. The brain is filled, and all I'm going to do is glue either side of this to the sides of the bottle. All I need to do now is add the ribbon. The only correct colour for this one, I think, is red. And job done. Fucking finally. 11 pipers piping complete. Not just 10 lords leaping, 10 lords are leaping. And that's how you know they mean business. And my plan for this decoration is centered around this little Santa Claus. I got him a couple of years ago in a bag of mixed decorations from a charity shop. And as you can see, he sadly lost his cranium. So he's got a hole in the head, a cracked face, cracks on the back, because it's just this really thin plastic that I know if I squeezed hard enough now, I could easily snatch his whole waist in, which I don't want to do. In fact, I want to do the opposite. I want to pad him out and make sure he stays strong and curvaceous. The reason I thought he would be good for Lords of Leaping is because he kind of does look like he's leaping with his arms and his legs up like that, bless him. And what's he leaping over? Well, he's going to be leaping over this Christmas tree, which is another broken vintage decoration from a charity shop. And I think together they make a nice little team. But the basic plan for this is just to restuff it with some paper and then make him a little new hat out of paper mache, ribbon on the top, Bob's your uncle. First I need to figure out how I'm attaching the tree to him. He does have a hole in between his legs, which gives possibility for something coming around and wrapping around the tree. The damage on his back is actually worse than I thought, so I'm gonna have to cover the back in paper mache as well. So he's gonna have a different textured bum than the rest of his body, but I don't think that really matters. Oh, we're going to have to do some paint touch-ups anyway, because I just peeled some of the red off of his bum. The question I'm asking myself is, why did I stuff this full of newspaper before I'd threaded the wire through? So I've just made my job a whole lot harder. And I need the wire to go through the whole thing so it can make up the base for the hat, have a place to hang the ribbon, and also be how I attach the tree to the bottom. Okay, so his face is literally shattering into pieces, and I want to glue him back together while I still can. So what I'm going to do do is put paper mache directly behind it and use that to shore up the whole face, and then glue this shard back in. It's got a firm backing and it can't move around anymore and it can't break anymore, or at least that's my thinking. Falling apart in front of me. This truly is emergency surgery. Let's see if we can save him. Come on. It's so insanely brittle, it just wants to fall apart. Be strong. Try and put this back on his face. Just a little shard of moustache. Oh, shit. Well, is this not the fiddliest thing ever? Okay, so the more you touch this, the more it falls apart. Had to give him quite a bit of reconstructive surgery, specifically on his ass, which is now even juicier than it was before because it was just shattering. So I've basically just paper mache'd over it. We're in the mindset of letting things go and not taking this too seriously. Okay, so this one is just becoming more and more of a mess the more I do it. Everything I touch is cracking, and I started adding a hat, but then I had to cover the face and I didn't like how it looked, so I've mushed it into just a blob, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I guess I'm going to do something different with it now, which will have to be decided when it's dry, because at the moment I just need to not be looking at it because it's making me angry. It's the next day after I stopped filming yesterday. I realised that I didn't want to lose this little plastic face, even though it's now split into 2 shards. So I fished back into the wet paper mache and pulled this out and then stuck it on the top. I also am finding that more and more of this thing just keeps breaking. All of this red stuff is peeling off, and I've already had to cover quite a lot of it in paper mache. So I've decided that there's no point fixing this up if this thing is going to keep breaking. So I'm going to cover his whole body in paper, and then I'll just have to repaint his whole outfit on, which kind of defeats the object of using this vintage decoration, other than the fact that it still saves it from landfill, even if you can't see any of it. Coating him in the paper will ensure he has a long life yet, and I think I've managed to keep his physique close enough to how it was. So here we are the next day. All of this thin paper mache that I did over the body is fully dried now. You can still see a lot of the colour of his clothes underneath it. I've just got to touch up this little bit of his foot here, which I couldn't do yesterday. Then I'll leave it to dry again. These projects are a bit annoying because there's lots of little things that I can do each day on each of them, but then I have to wait again for them to dry to do the next thing. I've just remembered that this guy's supposed to have a hat. At the moment, he is hatless. The reason why I want a hat on him specifically is because, again, in my little box of tricks, I found this tiny bell, and I thought the bell would be a nice addition to the end of his hat. So I'm going to quickly fashion one out of some wire and some paper and go over that with the paper mache so that it can all dry at the same time and I won't have to keep adding bits on. A new day and time for the final coat of paper mache on this. I'm basically going to just touch up his hat today. We've still got some cracks and things, so one more coat on this, leave it to dry, then it'll be ready to paint. Just going around his beard and the brim of his hat. It's good that the paper mache is so see-through because it means I can just copy what's underneath it. As I'm painting this, I realised I was starting to get hungry and like crave chocolate. And then I realised that this thing, once it's painted, because of all the texture from the paper mache, it looks like one of those chocolate Santas in a foil wrapper. It's making me salivate. An unexpected reaction, but good to know. I do appreciate that Santa rocks a waist belt just to nip in his coat a little bit. Not enough men wear a waist belt, but he makes it look so easy. The paint's all dry. It is a very basic Santa paint job, but sometimes you just don't want to mess with the classic. Final thing I need to do to him before I can assemble this and put it to one side is of course to seal it with some Mod Podge. So let me slap that on here now. The Mod Podge is dry and I realised I still have not put the words on this, and I've decided that his white waistband here is as good a place as any to put them. So I'm going to use my black fine liner to scrawl the words 10 Lords a Leaping on here, and then we're going to put them together. That is as messy as what I thought it would be. Firstly, let's uncover his little gold bell. I wasn't super keen on having the tree hanging from a wire coming from the middle of his legs, but that is what's ended up happening, and I actually don't mind. To attach it, all I'm going to do is wrap it around the tree. I think that's pretty securely on, and it is giving the effect of him leaping, I think. Finally, all I have to do is attach a ribbon to hang it with. Job's a good one. That's another decoration ticked off the list. On to the next thing. 9 ladies dancing. I'm coming from a very specific reference point for this one, which goes back to the Disney version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, specifically the song Heaven's Light / Hellfire. Frollo is like lusting after Esmeralda, and he's so angry that he's so attracted to her, and she's dancing in the flames of the fireplace and he's all singing with the monks behind him. Dark topic for children's cinema. But anyway, I wanted to go for a similar thing of dancing in the flames, and luckily for me I have this plastic fireplace. And what is a fireplace if not Christmassy? I also have this little Polly Pocket, which I've had since I was a small child. I don't know how old. She's missing an arm, but we have a very similar haircut. So all I really want to do is put my Polly Pocket here in the fireplace there. I'll add a backing piece so that I can paint some flames in this center bit. I can pop a little stocking coming off of the mantle there. Very, very festive. First thing I want to do is drill a little hole in the top of this where I can thread my ribbon through at the end. So I did something stupid. I was supposed to drill through that bit, but I drilled through the front. What a plonker. I'll re-drill it. Now it's just Johnny 2 holes. I'm wondering if I can use this for something else. Maybe I can string something through it to make it look purposeful. So now I've got a little loop here that I can tie my ribbon onto, and I've got 2 bits coming out of the front that can hang down over the front of the fireplace. I'm going to tie them at the back and secure them in when I put the back piece on with the fire on it. Now my cock up with the extra hole looks intentional. Now I'm just going to paint some flames in this little square. I'm going to go over this little central disc bit with some gold paint because it's all chipped and nasty. An update on the fireplace, because I was working on it in bed last night. I ended up deciding against doing the stocking idea because I turned that bit of wool into a little Christmassy garland thing. I just used some bits of felty scrap fabric that I had and made it into leaves there, and then cut out some stars from some red card and sewed those onto the garland. What I want to do is paint this bottom half area just in a black so that it's not all this yellowy colour. I'm just going to use acrylic paint for this, but because I'm painting onto a smooth plasticky surface, I'm going to key it really quickly before I paint it. Sanding this now, I'm thinking maybe I should put the writing on the bottom of this one instead. What if I hang a 9 from the mantelpiece and then just put ladies dancing on the bottom? I keep changing my mind with all of these. But that's the thing with this kind of project, you can't really pre-plan it too much because something always crops up or you get a new idea while you're making, and you just have to be willing to roll with it. Not terrible. I'm just waiting for it to dry so that I can paint this top bit here. And then maybe the 9 that I do hanging down here should be black to tie in the black again. Also, I should note that I did specifically make 9 of these red stars to be appropriate to the theme, since this one really isn't giving ladies dancing at all, to be honest. I just wanted to use this little fireplace. Black is a satisfying colour to paint. Just goes on really pigmented from the first coat. Time to put my fireplace together, and I just need to attach my back panel, which I'm gonna do with a little bit of glue, and then I need to stick my Polly Pocket onto the logs. Then I need to add my number 9 and my ribbon. I always find it surprisingly hard to tie the ribbon nicely. You'd think it would be like the easiest part of making one of these, but it's actually an easy way to ruin a lot of hard work with a rubbish looking ribbon. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this one, but I do think it will look cute on the tree. So I'm happy enough, and I've still got plenty more to do. So we just got to move on. 8 maids are milking. This is one that I think is going to be relatively quick and easy, and it's also one that's on the slightly sillier side. The things that I'm using to make this one are as follows. This Christmas bauble. It's just red with all of this gold bead detailing on it. To be honest, it's not my taste. It's a little bit too elegant. It's a little bit too refined. And also I find it to be unpleasantly crusty. So I want to cover it up. And I thought, what if I just put the dress upon the bauble? Then you get a little bit of sparkle underneath. Then in my box of stuff, I found this grey plastic tub, which I think looks like a really stretched out long version of a milk pail. If I take the top off and add a little wire over the top of it, that could go down onto the head of this, and it could have the little bucket strand and then maybe a bit of milk pouring out of it. So that's the idea for this one. First though, what I want to do is cut a hole in the bottom of this pot so that I can slot the top of this through and it will sit more snugly. Done. Now I need to add some wire around it to make arms to go through my dress here. Here it is with just the wire. Now I'll go over it with masking tape. I'll just check though that this is gonna fit my little dress. Perfect. Look at that. And also now it's kind of scarecrowy, which I like. Ooh, maybe I'll give it a pitchfork. I ran out of masking tape after doing one arm, so I'm gonna have to wait until I can get some more to finish this. Masking tape secured and little body finished. I want to keep these arms bendy so that she can do different things, but I don't want just a wire and masking tape finish because you can see the hands. Also, I'd be worried that the body will peel underneath this. So what I'm gonna do to make sure that it stays bendy and whatnot is actually just wrap some wool around it. I'm just going to wind it around all of the body and all of the arms. Just a quick and easy way to cover something. All done. It remains bendy. She can be active, but it's not going to fall apart now. I need to decide for this one where I'm putting the words. Maybe I could embroider an 8 onto the front of her dress there and then just draw on maids are milking around the skirt. And I want to paint some white paint onto her dress here so it kind of looks like milk is spilling out of the bucket. I'm going to sew her into her dress first because I want to turn over all these raw edges to make sure we're not going to get a load of things shedding, and I'll just sew down the back because once she's in the outfit she doesn't need to come out of it again. There is something just really magical about mini clothes. The dress is all sewn on. I'm going to add an 8 to her top. With a bit more of the wool, I can just stitch it on into the shape of an 8, and then I'm going to splatter it all with some milky white paint. I'm just going to write the maids are milking relatively small along the hem of her dress. It does bleed a bit, but generally I think it looks quite nice. It's the next day and the milk splatter has fully dried, and now all I need to do, put the bucket on its head and add a ribbon, and then this one will be done. I did a little bow at the top, thought it would help hide the hole. Here it is, number 8 done. It's nice to still have a little peek of the original decoration on the underside, even though I was never that keen on it. It adds a bit of glitter, and that's always welcome. Kind of reminds me of that episode of SpongeBob where Plankton controls the whole of Bikini Bottom with those bucket hats. So that's something else for me to enjoy. And all in all, I'm happy with it. We can move on to the next decoration on our list. Now we move on to the first of possibly too many birds in this video. 7 swans a swimming, which is actually one I'm really excited to start doing because I am trying out a new craft, and that craft is needle felting. I've been wanting to try this for ages, and I've been spurred into specific momentum because my boyfriend has actually been into needle felting for the last year or so. So he's inspired me, and I think that a swan is a good first challenge to try and make with this. So I went out and I got a little bit of felt and some stabby needles, but it would be a cop-out if I wasn't using any of the items from my tap boxes for this one. So I am going to be using this, which is a really beautiful antique doll head. It's marked on the back there 1902. I got this again, it was in a box of broken dolls from a charity shop, and because this is so old and beautiful, I definitely do not want to paper mache over it, stick anything to it, or do anything to it that would be permanent. So my thought is that I can use this as a base. Luckily it already has a big hole in the top and also this little screw hole as well. I can have the swan sitting on top of her head, kind of like a Regency era wig. And then I also had a couple of these blue petals from a broken fake flower thing, and I like the idea of having them at the bottom of the swan mimicking water. Then I can maybe finish it off with a bead or something at the bottom to hold it in place and thread the ribbon all the way up to hang from the top. Then in the future, if I ever want to salvage this little head for something else, I can do that pretty easily. Not that I have any specific other ideas for this, but it's just too nice to do anything permanent to. So now I can get started on my felting. I have a few white pipe cleaners that I'm going to use to make the basic shape of the swan, I think, first, and then felt on top of that. And then maybe I can use the pipe cleaners also to attach the swan to the head through the neck there. I'm going to mould these into a basic swan shape, and then I'll catch up with you before we start to felt. I understand that you're supposed to have a pad or a mat to do it onto, and I don't have one of those yet, so I'm just going to do it onto a bit of fabric. Got a needle loaded in this thing, and also I've got these loose ones. So let's see how we get on. It is already starting to mat together. Not sure how long I should be expecting this to take. Maybe 20 minutes later, and I'm getting the hang of it. It is very, very satisfying. I found that I actually prefer using a needle on its own rather than in this thing. This makes me think of that vaccine that we got at school that like stamped you on the arm. Don't really like it, and I think you get more control just using this. And I think it's gonna look super cute on her head. It's been over an hour of stabbing this so far. This is how it looks. I think the body size is about right now for the size of the head, and I'm just going to work up the neck and cover the head. Then I'll go back in and add some detail. Here we are. Looking at it now in the viewfinder, it's looking a little bit like a dodo, but it shouldn't do once the beak is all done. I'm pleasantly surprised so far. Didn't really take that long to do, and I only poked myself thrice, which I would say is good going. This is definitely a good little craft to do for Christmas decorations because they're so lightweight, and I guess you can make any shape from these. I'm going to be doing more felting in the future, I can tell you that for sure. I am glad I included the wire because I think I would have found it hard to get a nice curve on the neck without it. This is where potential stabbing of the fingers may occur. Get it as tightly packed as possible because I guess a small bit like this is the most likely to come a bit loose. Da, da, da. I got the little face on, and I actually think that is enough detail. Sometimes a bit simpler is better, and I don't want to add lots of other bells and whistles to it that will ruin the effect. Now I'm just taking my petals, which luckily each have a bit of wire inside of them, and I'm wrapping that wire around this loose pipe cleaner I've got at the bottom of my swan. It's like a little bouquet of swan. And then I'm just threading it through here, and the petals could lie all kinds of different ways. I have this little wooden bead, which I coloured in a couple of years ago with a Sharpie, and I'm slotting this on to cap off the bottom of the neck there. Just think it adds a certain something. And I'm going to needle felt just to cover up this little ball on the very end. I realised that the best place to hang this bauble from would be this hole at the top of the head. I kind of want this ribbon to go through my swan as well to keep it all upright. I went for a yellow ribbon on this one because I think against the blue it looks really nice. So I'm going to work on finishing this one this evening, and I will show you how it looks tomorrow. Here's my finished 7 swans a swimming, and honestly I think this is my favourite one so far. For the writing I literally just biroed it onto the back of one of these petals. You can find it if you're looking for it, but because it's blue it also blends in really well and doesn't take away from the overall effect. I also love this little double bead at the bottom. I think the swans turned out really cute. And as I said, if I ever want this head back for something else, I can easily just disassemble this and have it back in pristine condition. So I am super jazzed with this one. And I guess we can move on to the next. 6 geese are laying. It's going to be another paper mache decoration, and this is another one that was centered around me wanting to use another old broken iPhone cable wrapped around in a coil like this. Doesn't it make a perfect nest for a goose who wants to lay? So all I'm going to do is paper mache over it, and then also paper mache a little goose to be sitting in there as well, which I'm going to make out of cardboard because I didn't really have anything goose shaped that I could use as a base for this, but it's going to be easy enough to make. That's a passable goose shape, and it fits quite well in my little nest there. I do need to remember though before I start paper macheing that I need to make something that the ribbon can hang off. So I'm going to use some of my thin little wire and connect these 2 pieces together with it. I drew it with a little egg on its back, But I'm wondering if I want the egg underneath maybe. So far so flimsy. I'm thinking let's use the wire also to shape it and then have it coming out of the head. I'll be glad to have another broken phone cable out of my stocks and morphed into another more goosey form. By the way, I should say I'm going to go for a Canada goose. It's not going to be anatomically correct. The body's too small, but we can build it up with the paper mache. So let's get going. I'm going to start by shoving a load of gluey loo roll down into all the crevices to get this a bit more solid. I'm doing a mix of the loo roll, the newspaper, and also shoving some extra cardboard in some of the gaps to give it a more firm base. I think animals are always a nice subject matter, but birds particularly appeal to me as a thing to like sculpt because they're so pod-like, so aerodynamic, but also so cozy looking. I've never picked up a chicken or actually any bird. I always thought that they looked like they would feel nice in my hands. I definitely wouldn't recommend anyone go and disturb any wildlife, but this one I am allowed to hold because it is not sentient. Here's my goose so far. It's the next day. The top layer of this is still damp and tacky in places, but not so much that I cannot move on to the bottom. I'm just going to do a coat of the paper mache over the bottom of this, cover up all of this cable nonsense, and then leave it to dry again. It just needs a few bits now to fill in any little gaps, and also you can still see the end of that USB connector poking out the bottom, so I'm going to go over that a bit more. My goose is dry and it's ready for a first coat of paint. But before I do that, I remembered that I still have to make the little egg that's going to sit on this wire on the top of his head. And instead of making this out of paper mache, I've decided to use some air dry clay because I've got some that's open and it just makes a nice little change, doesn't it really? Just moulding it into a very basic egg shape. That's eggy enough. Now I just need to poke a hole down the middle of it so I can thread it onto that wire. Skewering it all the way through. Now I need to let this dry. It's only a small bit, so hopefully it won't take longer than 24 hours. It's goose painting time, and I want to paint this like a Canada goose with a black head and a grey body, just because I really like those geese. I do know that the body to head ratio versus a real goose is all wrong, but I don't think that's something I need to worry about. And once it's all painted up, you'll be able to tell what it's supposed to be. Is this turning into another one of my pipes where it looks like a pile of poo? At the moment it very much does, but let's just hope that we can salvage it on the second coat. Another day and I am back to work on my goose. I think it's looking okay, but it is looking very dull in its colours, so I want to fix that today, and I'm going to do that with the help of gold paint. The addition of the metallic will definitely Christmasify it a bit.
How much do you want for the golden goose?
They're not for sale.
Name the price.
She can't have one.
Who says I can't?
Looks kind of weird, like a spotty toad, but also from a distance it looks fine. The underside I'm going to write the words. I think I will write them in black. It's pretty rough, but since it's on the bottom it really doesn't matter at all. And once the black's dry I'm gonna go around it with the gold anyway, so that'll neaten it up. Now it's like a big gold nugget, definitely better than the brown. Now all I need to do is go over my goose one more time. Do you know what's depressing? When you put Canada goose into Google, all the first results are puffer jackets and things and not the actual geese. I added a 6 on his chest and he's got eyes now and feathers, and he's just generally looking a bit more realistic. We've got our dry goose in nest here, and we have our dry golden egg here. And before I can put them together I just need to do my sealing coat, so let's whack that on now. One thing I'll say about this goose is that it has a very, very sharp beak. Surprising how pointy that is. You could really have an eye out with that. All dry, and now our goose is ready to be assembled. Got my little egg bead here and my goose, and I think a pink ribbon will be nice on this one. One egg on one goose head, and now I've got a tiny hoop at the top here which I can thread my ribbon through. I don't know if I would recommend this as a good way to recycle your iPhone cables. I can say that it is one way that you can do it, and it's turned out pretty cute. You'd never know that there was a cable inside there now. Job done. We all know that this is the emotional climax of the song, and we're going for a pretty literal reading of it. For here I have 5 rings. They're not 5 gold rings. In fact, only 2 of them are gold. And they're all cheap costume jewelry rings that I've picked up at some time or another. This mood ring is kind of what inspired me to want to use these, because this is a ring that I got when I was probably about 12, and I've kept it ever since, but I don't ever wear it now. Actually, I don't ever wear any rings because I feel like you're being strangled via your finger. All I'm going to do is make a paper mache finger to wear all of these rings. I made quite a few finger based things now. There's loads of them on my pegboard in my art room, and I also made some finger hooks in my bedroom. So I do think it's only right to have at least one on the Christmas tree as well. I accidentally mixed some green paint in with my PVA glue, so the paper mache on this is going to be quite green. This is probably going to need at least 3 coats of this. In a way, this isn't only a Christmas decoration, it is also a storage solution, kind of like using my 11 Piper's bauble as a place to keep those little written word cards. This is just a place for me to keep 5 rings. If you had valuable jewellery, maybe this would be a good way to hide it in your house. It is looking very minty fresh though. I would say that's fingery enough for a first coat, so I'm going to hang it up to dry, and then we will come back tomorrow or the next day. I do need to get a move on though, because I've got quite a lot of these still to make. It's a new day, and I just thought I would try on all of these rings on my little finger here, and they fit pretty well, so I don't want to add too much extra girth with this second coat of paper mache. I'm just going to do a really thin one, then add a bit of definition around where the knuckles would be, add a nail, and leave it to dry for the second time. Our green finger is dry and ready to paint. Giving it a quick rub down with some sandpaper. Also, I've decided that the obvious colour to paint this is, of course, gold, because 5 gold rings just makes sense, doesn't it? I think a gold finger will be quite nice and jazzy for the tree. Though, saying that out loud now, just realised I don't want anyone to think that this is a James Bond reference, because it isn't. I so rarely get a chance to use my metallic paints that I'm really savouring it. Again, it does look like a chocolate, which I don't hate, but I do fear that this one's going to be a bit naff. I'm not going to drastically alter what I'm doing at this point though, because I think it will be fine once it's up on the tree. It's just one small part of a much wider picture. I'll see what I can do with a second coat of paint to salvage it a little bit once this is dry. I think I've said the sentence, once this is dry, about 50,000 times in this video so far. Have you found the constant outfits flicking back and forth confusing thus far, or distracting? I really hope not. The last thing I am going to do with my crafting day today is just add a bit of detail on this with fine liner. Decided I'm going to do a 5 on the nail and then put gold rings down the back. This was a lovely easy one compared to some of these that I'm working on. They're turning into overly complicated little issues. It's the next day, which means that it's sealing time, and this is a lovely quick job covering the whole thing to give it that extra shimmer. I don't know if I should have done something grander for this one, since it is like the bit of the song that everyone goes feral for, but to be honest I couldn't think of what else to do for it. Now to dry, and then we'll be able to put this one together. Wow, there's at least 5 quid's worth of jewellery on there. Very fancy stuff. And to go with the royal energy that it's giving, I'm going to go for a purple ribbon. And I'm also going to add this little goldy bronze bow that I found in my box of tricks. It's complete. And like I said, this one is not my favourite, but they can't all be my favourite. And it's not like I hate it. I do think it will look cute on the tree. So now we can move on to the next one. For calling birds. I looked up calling birds on Google because I wasn't actually sure if they were a specific type of bird, and the ones that were coming up were like crow looking blackbird raveny things, so we're gonna go with that. And the bits of tat that I'm upcycling this time is this polystyrene ball, which I literally have no clue why I have this. I'm assuming that it used to be covered in something else, but I can't think what. This is obviously a perfect thing for a bauble. I think it must have been a bauble at some point in its life. And then the other thing I'm using is this little pair of arms in a black velvet jacket, which is from another creepy doll who you will meet later in this video and who's getting a new pair of arms. But these ones kind of look fun on the bauble. What makes this calling bird? Absolutely nothing. So I'm going to also put a little black bird on the top as well, which I'm going to make out of this scrap black velvet, and then I'll also cover the rest of the bauble in this velvet as well, and then we're going to add words on the front, and I'm not sure how I'm doing that yet, maybe with wool. Quick voiceover interlude, because apparently in all of the clips I filmed I didn't ever explain this point in a clear way. Basically, I thought that Four Calling Birds sounded like it would be the name of a really mid indie scene band from like 2012, so the idea of the words embroidered on the front is that the bauble looks like it's wearing a kind of band merch tee. But yeah, that's the idea here. First, I'm going to try and make a little bird shape out of some wire and stab it through this bauble so that I can get the whole base. Then I'll start covering it in this black fabric, and I'm just going to sew this on as best I can. Always must remember to leave a little hoop for your ribbon. I think the scale of that is about right. I need to add a lot more strength because this type of wire is just so flimsy, but it's good to have the basic shape in place that I'm happy with. I'm just adding scrunched up paper underneath the masking tape, just building mass. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day what you do that with. So little scrappy bits of stuff that's already on the desk might as well get used. Job's a good one. Now to cover it in velvet, I'm going to do this by cutting really small patchworks of fabric and sewing them together in whatever way best shapes around the form. The more patches you use, the closer you're going to be able to get it to the shape underneath. This is very fiddly work. Also, because I'm sewing black to black, it is quite hard to see what I'm doing. The ball is now fully covered. No more horrible polystyrene on my fingertips. Now I just need to extend the velvet up over this bird. I have been working on this bird, but because it's all dark outside now and I'm relying just on lamps, it's not enough light to be able to sew this black without giving me a headache. So I'm going to put that on pause for now and get going on the writing on this t-shirt. I'm going to roughly embroider with this thin thread, which I'm hoping I can do relatively quickly. This is actually as far as I got with the embroidery the other night. Now I'm just working on the little bird at the top, and I've been doing this the same way as I did the body, that is with little patches of the velvet. The legs are way too chunky, I'm aware of that, but there's not so much I can do about it. And also the body at the moment is too thin. Birds have more of a bulbous kind of shape. I don't think it looks terrible. It was looking really terrible for a while. It was looking more like a dog than a bird. The bird is done, and I'm happy with it. Now I need to finish off the embroidery on this band tee because the Four Calling Birds are playing at the local youth centre tonight. I finished off the embroidery and reattached the arm last night, so this one is basically finished. Et voila! I feel like this is something that Sid from Toy Story would make. Actually, I think a lot of my personal taste comes from him. Another one ticked off the list, and on to the next. 3 French hens. I've been looking forward to starting this decoration because this is one of the sillier, more self-indulgent ones on the list. And it is all based around this little doll. I got this years and years and years ago. I'm not actually sure where. I think I got it from a charity shop or a jumble sale or similar. And she was wearing the outfit that's now on my 8 milking maids. She's also got a broken foot here, which is sad, and of course she's armless because the arms are on my calling bird decoration. It's all getting confusing. So this is what's left of her, and this is what we're working with. And I was looking at this and I just had a thought. Is she not screaming Emily in Paris season 4, whatever episode it is, when she wears this ridiculous Zorro outfit to that ball? She's got the black thing around the waist, she's got the kind of tight curl hairdo, and also of course Emily in Paris, French hens. We are making connections, and I want to make her in to Emily. So all I need to do for her is make her a pair of arms, make her a little outfit, make her a hat and hang her up. Oh, and also to integrate the hen thing, I'm also going to make her a little hen to be holding, and I am really excited about it. And I'm going to do this with paper mache. I did think about trying to sew the outfit, but I'm a better paper macher than I am sewer of miniature clothes. First up, I'll make her some little arms out of wire and masking tape, and also figure out the wire situation where I can thread it through to come out of her head. Probably if it goes up her back and then through her hair. Her hair has seen better days. It's got glue or something in it. A length of wire straight through her armholes. They're a bit too long, so I'm going to fold them back on themselves. And I need them to be bent round so that they can hold the chicken in place. She's looking pretty creepy now. I've covered her head in some paper just so that her hair doesn't get caught up in the paper mache, because that would be a nightmare. And I've built up the shoulders and stuff a little bit with masking tape. I've added this bit of wire coming from round her middle, and I'll thread it through the top of her hat so that she can be hung from the tree. Now I just need to make a few little extra bits before I do the first coat of paper mache. I'm going to make her wide brimmed hat and also the little chicken to go in her arms. I know that I did cover up the black band in the middle, but I'll be painting it back on at the end. This is very, very sticky. The first coat over something like plastic's always the hardest because it doesn't want to stick down as well. So I always let my first coat be really quite messy so that it's got plenty of texture for the next coat to kind of cling onto. I'm giving her nice strong arms so that they can support the weight of the chicken. At the moment it just looks like I'm making it into a mummy, especially with the face covered in tape. I do want to try and get a full coat on today, so I'm running a bit low on time for this project. I don't think I had realised quite how close to Christmas it is. I'm filming this on the 8th of December and I need all of these finished and dry and the video edited before Christmas, because otherwise nobody's going to want to watch this in January. Now I need to leave this to dry, so I'm going to move on to doing the hat. The pleasure of making a small paper mache hat of an afternoon. That's the best I can do on that for now. Now we leave it to dry and move on to the chicken. Chicken before, chicken after one coat. Okay, now all I can do is leave these to dry and come back to it in a couple of days for another coat. So here's Emily all dry, got a new foot in place, her arms are nice and solid, her hat's still kind of drying, so I need to let that sit for another couple of hours. I can get on with painting her body and this chicken, and I'm going to start out by giving her a light sand just to get the roughest bits off. My paper mache things always have a slightly rough finish, but I don't actually mind that at all. But I didn't do the neatest job when I was applying the paper mache to this, so I think a sand will go a long way. In the scene, she's wearing a black and white stripy catsuit, so I'm going to start off with a couple of coats of just pure white over her whole body, and then I can go in with the black stripes once that's dry. I love painting everything one colour because you don't have to think about what you're doing really at all. You just put it on everywhere. My hat's now ready for a first coat of paint, so I'll be doing this in a lovely shade of black. That is an impressive feat of engineering, if I do say so myself. I'm in between coats of paint, but I thought I should mention that I had decided to do her skirt out of fabric. I did try doing it out of the paper mache, but it just wasn't looking very good. So instead I'm using a bit more of this scrap black velvet, and I'm making a little basic half skirt for her. I'm starting off by making some little padding at her hips because the skirt that she's wearing goes out and then down. So once I've got this base layer, I can just add another layer on top and it should hang as it does in the show. This is what it looks like so far. The white paint is dry and now I can just go back and add the black stripes to her outfit. I'm hoping I can get away with only one coat on the black. And then for the words, I'm thinking I'll write them on the chicken, which I did paint a bit more of a chickeny colour yesterday, but it does need going over and finishing off. This is taking ages. Painting some little shoes back on. I think in the show she's wearing heels with this outfit, but I don't want to put this lady through that. So she's just wearing some little slip-on flats. It's giving school shoes circa 2008. It looks done, except haven't done any of the back yet. So I'll do that and then get back to you. I decided to lean into the fact that it looks like a football kit and put a 3 on the back of her jumpsuit there. This outfit's very much Beetlejuice meets Zorro. It's an intriguing look. This will have to do. And now we seal. All dry, and before I unveil her face, I want to get her little skirt sewn onto her. So I'm going to glue it at the back, just in one spot to keep it in place. And then I'll sew these pieces round to hopefully make this skirt somewhat resemble this skirt. The hips are a little bit more exaggerated in this version than in the show, but I like the added drama and there's no way that I'm going to remake it. Let us peel the masking tape and paper off her head. It's like opening a Christmas present. Her hair is quite messed up, but fortunately for her, most of that is going to be covered by her gigantic hat anyway. So we can just push all the stragglers up in there and you would never know. In the show, she is wearing a black mask, but I can't think of a way to do that where it won't look rubbish. I don't know if I want to draw on her face. So my version of Emily Cooper is going mask off, I'm afraid. I admit the execution of the hat could have been better, but hopefully it's passable. And maybe once our chicken is in place, the dodgy headwear will get a pass. Now all I need to do is add a ribbon and we'll be on to the next one. 2 turtle doves. You could say I'm cheating slightly because I'm using the base of a Christmas decoration I made a couple of years ago. Specifically, you can see here that I made it on the 19th of September 2022. And it's just a photo that I had of a pigeon that I cut out, stuck to the back of some vinyl floor tile, which I then coloured in like a pigeon. And it's got a bit of scrappy string on it. I remember not being very happy with this at the time, though I have had it on my Christmas tree. It just doesn't feel finished. So I thought, why not bring it back to life with this project? Also, turtle doves aren't a bird that you see that often, so a pigeon is my honorary turtle dove. This should be a quick and easy project. I want to keep my photo side of the real pigeon and cover up this back bit. And since I'm coming off the high of my first time needle felting, I'm kind of in the mood to do it again. So I've got this felty wool secondhand fabric and I thought I could use that as a backing for the bird, and then onto this try and needle felt the words on the back, because I believe you can needle felt onto other felty fabric and I'm keen to give it a try. So I'm going to start by cutting out a piece about the right size. I've traced on the shape of the bird so that when I'm doing my felting I know what bounds to cover. I'm just getting tiny little bits and then I'm going to roll it into the general shapes of the letter and stab it into the back of this. This has taken about 15 minutes and it's a highly satisfying thing to do, so I will proceed. Now I've got my back panel done, I was trying to think about how I'm integrating this ruffle framey trim around the front. I've cut out another piece of fabric to match, and I think what I'm going to do is glue my bird onto it, and then I'm going to needle felt a white rim around the pigeon here. Then I can sew the two pieces together and cut down into them around the edges to give it a fringed finish. I'm not sure whether that will look good or not. We only find out by trying. So I have felted around my pigeon and I think it looks good. It makes him stand out more. And now I just need to connect my back piece, which, because these are both made of wool kind of felt, I'm wondering if I can just like felt them together with my needle. You know what? This has come out more than strong enough. If I wanted to tug it apart, I could, but I won't be pulling on this, so I don't need to stitch around it at all. Now I'm just going to cut up into this woolen stuff to create some fringy type effect for a bit of added texture, you know? This is fun. It feels very like kids' crafts. I used to love the end of term towards Christmas, where instead of lessons you would like make a paper lantern or something crafty. So much more fun than maths. It's looking cute. It looks like he won first prize in the pigeon contest. And it's more or less done now. I just need to add a ribbon, and I also want to add another one of my grand beads to the top of this. The one I have selected is this one, this little red glass bead, because it looks identical to a grape. And I think pigeons probably like grapes. So I'll hang this on the ribbon as we hang it up. Here's the finished decoration. I'm happy with it. It feels nice now. I think it looks nice. And I haven't got much else to say about it. Let's move on to our final decoration. I just finished it and hung it up next to the other ones that I've got finished, such as this one, and I realised that it's not 2 calling birds, it's 2 turtle doves, which is why it made sense for me to make it a pigeon in the first place. So why I have written this on here, oh, I do not know. How incredibly annoying of a thing for me to have done. There is no way that I'm going to take this apart and refelt it. So I need to think of a different option. Bear with me. Now we can actually move on to my final decoration. Exciting times. If you watched my last video of me making over my bedroom light switch, you might recognise this guy because I started working on him at the same time as I was doing that project before I knew I was doing a 12 Days of Christmas video. And I thought that he would make a perfect partridge in a pear tree, thinking he's like a kid doing a school performance and he's wearing a little costume of a pear tree and holding a partridge over his head. Fun fact, I was in a performance of the 12 Days of Christmas at primary school and I was one of the 11 pipers piping, and all I had to do is walk down the middle of the school gym pretending to play a recorder, and I was so scared to mess it up, but it went off seamlessly. Also, I asked in my last video if people have any suggestions for a name for him, and the first comment I saw with a suggestion suggested the name Tony. So I'm going to go with Tony, also because he's going to be a partridge in a pear tree, and it just so happens that my great-grandpa, whose surname was Partridge, his first name was Tony. This can make me think of him now. So yeah, I got a good head start on this one, and most of his outfits already done. The only thing that are looking pretty rough are his arms, so I want to go over that, and I also want to build in like a little sleeve here because I like the idea of him wearing a t-shirt with a long sleeve top underneath, not sure why. And then I need to turn this ball into a partridge, which I think I'm just going to do with newspaper and masking tape. It doesn't look very partridgey, but I have a good get out of jail with this one because it's a fake partridge in this school production, so if it looks rubbish I can just say that he made it and he's not very good at making things. Pass the buck. We're swiftly losing light, so I had better get on with the paper mache and to not get loads of paper stuck to his face, which is easier said than done when you've got a lot of wet paper really close to his face. It's kind of asking for it. Here's our partridge dry after one coat of the paper mache. Doesn't need much more, but I'm going to touch it up a little bit because his face is a bit messed up. I want to fix his beak. That'll do. Time to do a first coat of paint on my partridge and my pear tree. Once again, the first coat of paint is going to look rubbish and I'm just going to block in really basic colours. Brown for the partridge, green for the outfit. I am looking forward to painting him actually. I think he's going to look nice once he's got a bit of colour on him. I'm going to add more detail in on the outfit later down the line. Some with paint and then some maybe with fine liner or Sharpie. Time to try and paint this partridge. La 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 la. And I've got a reference image up. That's what we're going for. Also, now that the first coat of the greens dried on this dress, I think it's way too much of like a Kelly green. It needs to be more peary, more yellowy. So I'm going to go over this as well. But first up, we're working on the bird. Kind of looks like a knight wearing a chainmail snood. Looking much more pheasanty. I'm happy enough with that as it is, and I can move on to the dress. I want the words going around the tutu on this one, and I'm thinking I can incorporate these in paint. So I'm going to draw out an outline of the words to make sure that the sizing's right. Then I'm going to go over this with a different shade of green because this is just not working for me, despite the fact that it's pretty close to the colour I'm personally wearing, but it suits me. Doesn't suit him. I have written out the words on the tutu and I'm thinking I'm going to try and paint around them. Not terrible. I do appreciate that it stands up on its own. I'm also wondering whether to give him stripy sleeves, just because I love a stripy sleeve. The green to me is much improved, even though on camera it looks actually the same as it did before. Let's see. Look at the pear glistening in the light. I'm not sure whether his shorts want to be patterned. I could do those polka dot maybe. I like projects like this where you can just do lots of repetitive patterns and decorative things. I'm desperate to put some more of this metallic paint elsewhere on this, so I'm thinking to put it around the very edge of the tutu here, and also maybe to go over the writing with the gold. Would that be nice? This is what always happens with this kind of project. Once I start adding details, I just want to add more and more silly little things. It's all painted and dry, and now, as I'm sure you will guess, we're going to seal it with some Mod Podge. By the way, I hope we're all just collectively ignoring the fact that this partridge has no legs to speak of. I'm just imagining that they're all tucked back up into his tail feathers. Shit. Oops. Trying to get it into all the nooks and crannies. Also try not to put too much on so that it starts pooling, because it can dry white if you leave a chunky bit on, as I've discovered a few times with recent projects. Catch up with you all again once this is dry so that I can change out this ribbon, and then we can move on to the final reveals. It's turned out much as I'd hoped, but for now let's just review how the set looks all together. This is the beigeflannel official 12 Days of Christmas collaboration Christmas tree bauble decoration set. Well, this project has been an absolute marathon, and it is getting dangerously close to Christmas for me to still be working on this video. I think I underestimated how long making 12 of these was going to take, and I've accidentally made the longest video on my channel to date, and I'm putting it out mere days before Christmas. For the record, I'm filming this on the 20th of December, and I'm really worried that I've missed the boat for Christmas 2024, but we must persevere regardless, and there's always future Christmases. Maybe you're watching this in 2028. If so, comment and say hi. If you've made it through this whole thing, thank you so much. You are my personal Christmas angel. If you're new here and you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you stuck around for more in 2025, because there will undoubtedly be more stupid projects coming up on my channel. And finally, now all that's left to do is to hang my new set of Christmas decorations over on my Christmas tree. 12 drummers drumming, 11 pipers piping, 10 lords are leaping, 9 ladies dancing, 8 maids are milking, 7 swans are swimming, 6 geese are laying, 5 gold rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree. That's the best take I've done of trying to sing that song so far.